So that was sending a message. They walked onto our turf, and right from the jump, you guys told them where they were at. Awesome job. Okay, game ball. 211 yards. 5 touchdowns. Over 5,000 rushing yards. Joe Mixon.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry. I am Jay Croucher, and it's like I always say, Matthew Berry, let Joe cook. And he certainly cooked to the tune of 5 touchdowns yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Taylor has been determined to establish the run all season long.
He finally 9 weeks.
But it only took him 9 weeks. It is noon on a Monday on Peacock, but of course, it is 5 o'clock somewhere, including in Cincinnati, where they're loving life. You know, they feel pretty good. They're much maligned, including on this show, offensive line.
Yes.
Took care of the Panthers, whose defensive line hasn't been that strong. This was a league winner. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you had this guy on your team, you won your matchup. I faced him because, of course, I did. In our show league, stupid Brian Rubin.
No.
Like, oh, no, yeah. I mean, like,
He's getting a lot of run on this show lately, Brian Rubin.
Well, he needs to because it's his last year on the show.
There you go.
Just so you know. I mean, honestly, of course, I played Joe Mixon in our show league. I have the most points scored against me.
Yeah.
Of course, I didn't even have to look. I'm like, I wonder who owns Joe Mixon in our show league. Of course, it's B. Rubes. Who am I playing this week? Of course, I'm playing B. Rubes. It was the 9th best day by a running back in fantasy football since the year 2000. Take a look at some of these names here as well. 22 rushes, 153 yards, 4 touchdowns, and then 458 in the passing game, including a touchdown as well. I thought we had a full screen. Apparently we do not. Does not matter. We don't need to. He was good.
Great day for Joe Mixon. Not a great day today for Frank Reich, and we'll get into that and the repercussions fantasy-wise a little bit later in the show. But let's jump into some other Roto World headlines. And, Joe Mixon, he's the big story from yesterday.
There we go.
With 208 scrimmage yards, 5 touchdowns, 82% of his fantasy points came in the first half as well. He did it quickly. I think we both thought that game might be a little bit closer. It was not.
I mean, I'll cop to it, man. I thought the Panthers were going to cover. I thought, we talked about how banged up that secondary was from Cincinnati, and give credit where credit is due. The Bengals, on a short week, they played the Monday night game last week, but on a short week with a very beat-up secondary, 3 starters of the secondary were out of this game, and yet still, P.J. Walker was completely harassed. They got nothing going on offense. D'Onta Foreman, just 7 for 23, just 2 receptions for -2 yards. Was only played like 43% of the offensive snaps as this game got away from them, and got away from them quickly as well. DJ Moore, who was my kind of lock of the week, did not perform either. I got this game as wrong as possible. I will say I thought Joe Mixon would have a good game. I didn't think 5 touchdowns, but we talked on Fantasy Football pregame, Jay, about positive regression coming for Joe Mixon. We thought it would start today against a Panthers run defense that was weak. But yeah, on the Panthers side of the ball, could not have been more wrong.
No, and it went very wrong for P.J. Walker. I miss the days of P.J. Walker being a thing and a viable thing.
Yeah.
It was a better world to believe in when P.J. Walker was throwing it 70 yards in the air to DJ Moore.
He got replaced by Baker Mayfield at half. Baker Mayfield goes 14 of 20, 155, and 2 touchdowns. His actually best fantasy week since week 1.
Looked good out there, Baker.
He looked all right. Now, again, as we talked about, Cincinnati was missing 3 corners in this game. It'll be interesting to see who starts next week for the Carolina Panthers, only because they play the Atlanta Falcons, which is one of the worst secondaries.
I was going to say, is it actually interesting who starts for the Carolina Panthers?
If you have DJ Moore or D'Onta Foreman on your team, it certainly is. They play the Falcons. So I do think whether it's Baker Mayfield or P.J. Walker, they are viable as a streamer next week against Atlanta in a 2-quarterback league, in a deep league, in a super flex league, what have you. And I do think it matters for D'Onta Foreman and DJ Moore. I'm just chalking this up to a bad day at the office.
Yep. The Panthers are 3-point dogs at home to the Atlanta Falcons in what is the seminal Thursday night football game Falcons at Panthers. Let's
the
go
short
to
week. We'll turn it around. But again, think about how run heavy. I mean, think about this, right? I mean, we'll get into him in a little bit, but think about how excited you must be if you have Cordero Patterson or even Tyler Algier.
Sure.
We just saw Joe Mixon, get 5 touchdowns against this run defense, and now they've got. I mean, the Panthers have got to play on, Thursday night. The Falcons they have a lot of things that they don't do well, but they run the ball well. They do. Give them credit there.
They are a very solid team. And
Patterson will make the love list this week. He was on the love list this week.
Yep.
He'll make it again next week.
Yep, got denied a big touchdown in that game as well. He looked just 100% back to being fully healthy. The Falcons right now, they might be a better team just flat out than the Green Bay Packers, and that was maybe the big story.
Is that
from
damning
yesterday.
with faint praise?
Yeah, I think maybe the biggest story is that the Packers are it seems like they're completely done. Aaron Rodgers melts down. A lot of the previous, I think, failures of the Packers weren't necessarily on him. A lot of yesterday was on him. He throws the 3 picks, 2 in the red zone, and that's about as bad as I've ever seen him play.
He was brutal. Now there's one of them got tipped to the line of scrimmage. There was one of the red zone trips that they had going down there. Alan Lazard, I thought he got in. Alan Lazard caught a pass and ran all the way down, and then he was just down literally at the 5-inch line or something like that. I actually thought they might have, they could have challenged it, whatever. But whatever. The fact of the matter is that Alan Lazard gets another 5 inches, and that's a touchdown pass. Instead, he's down at the 1. They get 4 plays. Dylan can't get in for whatever reason. Credit the Detroit Lions. But I think I believe we have some sound from Aaron Rodgers after the game. He was not happy, Jay.
No, he wasn't.
He was not.
You've been pretty optimistic these last couple of weeks, saying all it takes is 1. Sounds like there's still a little bit of that left, but how do you, I'm not trying to be disrespectful in saying this, how do you believe that you guys can still turn around after you guys have just lost to that team?
I've been counted out many times in my life, as have many of my teammates, and I hope we just dig deep.
Do you at all regret not retiring? I mean, you just, there are times outside looking in where you look almost miserable on the field sometimes.
I think that's an exaggeration, Pete. Frustration and miserability are 2 different emotions. So when I decided to come back, it was all in, and I don't make decisions and then, hindsight 2020, have regrets about big decisions like that. So I was all in, and this is a lot of life lessons for sure this year. But luckily it's not over.
Frustration and miserability are 2 different things.
2 different emotions.
But to this untrained eye, they look exactly like the same thing.
Look, there's heavy overlap on the Venn diagram between frustration and miserability.
I mean, what are we doing?
What the hell was that? Aaron Rodgers is, he's kind of got the Jake Gyllenhaal haircut in Prisoners.
I want to unpack that whole thing like the Zapruder film. I'll say this. Just the fact that we're showing, forget the words.
Yeah.
The fact that we are showing sad Aaron Rodgers video after a game against the Detroit Lions should tell you everything you need to know. This is a guy that for his career owns the Detroit Lions. Even in years when the Lions were good, the Lions are not good this year. They've been plucky. They've been plucky, you know what I mean? But right, they're 2-6.
Yeah.
Right? They have 2 wins. The Packers and my Commanders.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carson Wentz. Let's do this. Here's some numbers.
Yeah.
Here's some numbers. He has 0 games with over 17 fantasy points game this season. He is QB 23 on a fantasy points per game basis. It's his first career game ever with 2 red zone interceptions. It's the first time he's lost 5 in a row since 2008. We're in 2022. I was about to say 23. I'm just looking ahead.
So is Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah,
I don't think there's anything more he can say.
He had Alan Lazard. He loses at Aaron Jones halfway through this game, but still, dude. They had opportunities. Credit the Detroit Lions. But still, how can you? There's no hope in sight. Let me put it this way: if the Packers next week play the Cowboys, you ain't starting them there.
No.
Then they play the Tennessee Titans, and we just saw what the Titans did to the Chiefs. You're not starting him there. Then next week he's at Philadelphia.
You're not starting him.
You're not starting him there.
Yep.
And then then he's at Chicago. Okay, maybe. You know what I mean? At Chicago is usually a tough place to play, but Rodgers owns them and blah 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 blah. We just saw Tua go off on them. But think about that. He's QB 23 on a points per game basis. You won't feel good about starting him any of the next 3 weeks. Even if he goes off against Dallas, you don't feel good about starting him. You're going to need a body of work. And so assuming he struggles in the next 3 games, which would not be surprising if any quarterback struggled against the Cowboys, the Titans, or the Eagles, are you starting him against the Bears? And by the way, that'd be week 13.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically win or go home kind of time. It's the second to last week before the fantasy playoff starts. Aaron Rodgers should not be rostered in fantasy leagues, period.
We talked yesterday about how on Fantasy Football Pregame that Aaron Rodgers, this game was designed for him in a lab to get right. And he couldn't get right. He looked worse than ever. He couldn't get right against the Commanders. Couldn't get right against the vulnerable Giants defense. It's just not going to happen. Now he loses Aaron Jones. I mean, X-ray's back negative. Seems like Jones will be fine, but still.
Sometimes, there are some times when two sides split up and both sides go on to have tremendous success. Right? I'm trying to think of a good example of that, right? Both sides thrive, whatever, right? Whatever. I leave ESPN, right? I feel like I'm thriving here, and believe me, ESPN is still keeping the lights on. They're doing just fine. Yes. You know what I mean? So great. Both sides thriving. Perfect. Bingo, bango. But then you think about, I'm trying to think, Hall & Oates. No one wants Hall. No one wants Oates. You need them together.
Everyone loses.
Yeah. And I feel like Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, they're like Hall & Oates. Yeah. Or a more recent reference that I can't come up with at the moment.
That's all right. A more recent reference might get us into trouble, so that's good.
What's a good more? Well, what's a good more? Someone to research. What's a good? I'm trying to think.
Tweet at Matthew Berry T.
Yeah, exactly. Give me a good reference. I'm just trying to think of Right. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just going to say that the betting market has now completely given up on the Green Bay Packers. Rashawn Gary's torn his ACL. He's obviously done for the year now. That's horrible news. One of the best young pass rushers in the league, their best defensive player. They are 5.5-point underdogs at home. I don't know what the research is on that, but that has not happened in a long time, if ever, to Aaron Rodgers. And now they're 5.5-point dogs to the Cowboys, who, you flip it around, the Cowboys were 10-point favorites at home to the Bears a week ago. And so once you factor in home field advantage, the market is saying that the Packers and the Bears are basically the same team, which is incredible when you think about where these two teams were after week 2. It's very grim in Green Bay. Better news, though, for Detroit.
Well, before we move up there, just very quickly, to your point, just Adam Schefter tweeting out just before we go to before we started the show, the X-rays on Aaron Jones were negative. Source told him that he should be able to play this week. Aaron Jones said, quote, "It was frustrating because I felt like I could have went back in, but they were being smart. I do know from my time at ESPN, my dear friend Stefania Bell, who really studies these kind of things, has told me more and more, and she said this on the air as well, that the Packers medical staff is among the most conservative in the NFL. So that makes sense that they were holding him out and they want to be cautious. But the fact that he avoided serious injury is great. So Jones should be good to go next week. The only other Packer that I think you can consider starting, and still you don't love the matchup with the Cowboys next week, but Allen Lazard once again, gets into the end zone. Actually should have had 2. He's had 42 targets over the last 5 games. On a points per game basis, he's a top 15 fantasy wide receiver. Even as bad as Aaron Rodgers has been this year, he's been able to keep Allen Lazard's fantasy value afloat.
Yep. Good news for Detroit, getting the win. Defense looked much improved. Wasn't the league worst defense that it had been coming into that game. But fantasy-wise, not a lot of meat on the bone, particularly for the running backs in Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. Neither really gave you what you wanted as we look at their splits against the Packers. I mean, Jamal Williams got a lot of volume, 24 rushing attempts for 81 yards. And then DeAndre Swift, this was the concern yesterday. We just didn't know. We were hoping that he would get a little bit more work, but he did get the 3 catches for 40 yards, which salvaged the day a little bit.
I believe he played only 16% of the offensive snaps. He played, I want to say, single digits, like 9 snaps, 10 snaps total in this game. He hasn't had more than double-digit touches in a game since week number 1. Justin Jackson there, Craig Reynolds left this game as well with an injury. So it remains a mess. Now, they play Chicago next week. You can run on the Bears significantly. Giants, Buffalo, Jags. So we will see. Hopefully we get more reports. I will say the reporting on DeAndre Swift was pretty good. We expressed caution about him on Fantasy Football pregame. We talked about the fact that if I had both of them, I would prefer Jamal Williams. If you go back and look at my ranks from last week, Jamal Williams was ranked higher than DeAndre Swift. And yeah, at the moment, he's the Detroit running back you want to have. Hang on to DeAndre Swift, though, because we know about the explosiveness. Hopefully, he can just get right one of these weeks.
Yep. All right, let's move around in the NFC North to the feel-good Chicago Bears.
And disappointing game for Amon-Ra St. Brown, but this was a tough matchup as well. He has had 9 or more targets in every full game that he's played so far this season. Better days are coming for the Sun God. That was just... It was a miss. I don't know. What are you going to do?
Yeah, it was a bit of a mess. Okay, let's jump to Justin Fields, who set the single-game record for a rushing quarterback. And firstly, here is Tua Tagovailoa on Justin Fields.
He impressed me a lot. How much rushing yards did he have? He had like 200?
73 something.
Jeez. I mean, dude's a baller. Dude's a baller. And, he was making some plays in the pass game as well. But I'm happy for him. I'm happy for the success that he's finding. He's finding himself in this league, and I think people are starting to recognize more the more he gets out and has those opportunities to play.
Just everything. My comfortability in the pocket, just trying to stay calm when a bunch of chaos is going on around me, and just trying to lead the guys to touchdown drives each and every drive.
Justin Fields' comfortability wins the head-to-head matchup against Aaron Rodgers' miserability. Here's one of those incredible runs. His ability to stay on his feet and then accelerate.
Yeah, I mean, he's blowing past defensive backs. He's blowing past corners. It's ridiculous there. 178 yards, as you heard there in the press conference sound as well. 15 for 178. Here's Mike McDaniel yelling, Justin Fields to just stop it. Stop embarrassing me. He looks angry, Mike McDaniel. I was like, isn't that so funny? Mike McDaniel actually looks angry. Stop embarrassing my team.
It's hard not to like Mike McDaniel.
Yes. We like Mike McDaniel. We like Justin Fields as well. As you see it here on your screen, more rushing yards in a game by a quarterback than anyone else in NFL history. The obvious names are on this list. We see Michael Vick, we see Lamar Jackson, we see Colin Kaepernick. None of them have ever had a game where they rushed for 178 yards. Michael Vick had a 173 game against Minnesota a number of years back. But Justin Fields, can I talk about one thing that frustrates me?
Sure you can.
Is that I saw a lot of people last night tweeting videos or reactions. I follow a lot of people on fantasy Twitter. A lot of people.
I can imagine.
I mean, well, it's twofold. Number one is I do that because that's an interest of mine. Obviously, it's a huge interest of mine.
You like fantasy
but
football.
I also I'm gonna be serious for a second. I feel like it's a sign of support. I have a very large following. I'm very lucky to have a number of people that are interested in my whatever I say, and so I feel like, given the platform that I've been blessed to have, that it's important for me to support the fantasy community, and so I try to follow as many people as I can, and when I see something that's interesting, I try to amplify those people, whether or not I have some sort of business relationship with them. And I have a business relationship with a lot of people in the industry as well. So, by the way, although if I don't follow you on Twitter, maybe take a hint. I'm either not aware of you or there's a reason. But what I would say here is that I see a lot of things on fantasy, on Twitter, and I'm active on the platform. And I would say that I saw a lot of people saying, oh, wow, Justin Fields, I think Justin Fields is now a QB1. I'm like, Justin Fields has been a QB1 for 5 weeks now.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this for a month.
He's been the best quarterback in fantasy for a month.
What?
Yeah.
Listen, it's all opinions about players. I get stuff wrong all the time. Other people get stuff wrong. No one's perfect. We're all just giving opinions on players. So this isn't like me coming down from Mount Holy saying, but I'm just this one's numbers are numbers. We can all say we think it's a fluke or we think it's real or whatever, but numbers are numbers. Justin Fields, since week 6, is the number one quarterback in fantasy. He was on the love list coming into this week, and we talked about him all last week right here on this show, Jay Croucher, about the fact that Justin Fields has been a top 12 fantasy quarterback for a month. Like, now he's a QB1? Like, what do we do? Wait, what? Is no one watching football? Is it only you and I?
I'm not sure there are 5 guys you would want more at the quarterback position than Justin Fields going forward. There might not be 4. There might not be 3, honestly.
Okay. The rushing obviously keeps his floor high.
Yes.
Rushing has made bad quarterbacks fantasy relevant just because of the rushing. But as we talked about on fantasy football pregame Sunday morning, as we've talked about the last couple of weeks, like, he is starting to forget numbers. Justin Fields can play. Like, he's running the offense. We talked about this, like a completely different quarterback after the first couple of weeks to what he has been over the last handful of weeks as well. And oh, by the way, all of a sudden, kind of has some weapons. They've always had a strong run game outside of Fields, right? You have to account for Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. But Darnell Mooney, we've always thought was talented, and now they're finding ways to get him the ball. And there was a Cole Kmet sighting yesterday.
Unbelievable.
There was a Cole Kmet sighting. Cole Kmet, back from the dead. Undertaker gets, woo, I'm back, baby.
That's terrifying.
Cole Kmet, thank you very much. Cole Kmet yesterday, right? Cole Kmet, 5 for 41, the 2 touchdowns, but also on 6 targets, and we've seen this. Yep. And oh, by the way, over the trade deadline, they added Chase Claypool, and so I agree with you. I think he's like a top 5 fantasy quarterback the rest of the way. We should probably do a name game.
It's Lamar, Hurts, Mahomes, Allen, Fields, right? Isn't he 5th?
Yeah,
in that order. That's the top 5 to me, I think.
Yeah, like, you'd rather have him than Brady.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you'd rather have him than Herbert.
Yep, definitely.
You'd
Burrow,
right?
I'd take Fields over Burrow at this point. I think with the offensive line concerns, Chase still going to miss a little bit of time. It's close.
That one's close. I'd rather have him than Dak.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Tua, that's close.
That one's close too, but I think he's top 7. He's right there. I'd want to look at the schedule the rest of the way a little bit more, but he's easy top 7, top 8 the rest of the way.
We saw Colin Kaepernick's name on that list, and yesterday that's what reminded me that playoff game, the Kaepernick where he just ran over Green Bay and Lambeau. That's what Fields was like yesterday. Where it's like, what the hell is this sport? Like, he looks like a revolution out there, and teams are playing too high safety more than ever before, and Fields is taking advantage of that. He is just running rampant.
I think I'd rather have him than Geno Smith.
Yeah.
And Geno Smith's been great.
Yeah, Geno Smith's been fantastic. We'll be talking about him lots the rest of the week, but let's talk about.
So anyway, but Darnell Mooney, he's
also back.
He's also back. 12 or more fantasy points in 4 of the past 6 games, at least 50 yards in 5 of the past 6. He's got a 28% target share this year, and because of the rushing success of Justin Fields, teams when they play him are going to have to, they're already keeping a spy in somewhat, but even more so. Mooney's going to see some single coverage, and especially now that they've added Chase Claypool as well. And so, Mooney, 7 for 43 and a touchdown, could have had an even bigger day as well.
Yep.
By the way, next week, they play Detroit.
Yeah. They can
like you said, to your point, well, exactly. that'll be fascinating, right? Because we just saw Detroit take care of Aaron Rodgers, and now here comes Justin Fields. And to your point, the betting market thinks that the Bears and the Packers are basically the same.
Basically the same. Tell you what, Bears have got a better offense right now than the Packers. Let's jump to Miami, another explosive offense. And let's talk about the backfield, which I think fantasy-wise is the most interesting aspect, because we thought that Raheem Mostert was still going to be the guy, and that Jeff Wilson maybe get gradually worked in, and that it was mainly insurance for Raheem Mostert, but they pretty much split carries down the middle.
We talked about this on Fantasy Football pregame about how Wilson should be, that I'd want to see it on the field, but definitely you should add him, because there's a chance he's going to be, there's going to be much more of a committee than I think people initially think. He played 50% of the offensive snaps. Mostert, friend of the podcast, friend of the show, Raheem Mostert, Raheem the Dream, just 46%. He actually out-touched Mostert 12-10. And so, Wilson had the nice play. He caught the ball for the touchdown. That was a nice run after the catch. I'm not ready to say, I think in my rankings this week I will still have Mostert over Wilson, but it's a lot closer than it would have been a week and a half ago. And so all the concerns we had about Chase Edmonds are actually there now with Jeff Wilson Jr. And, this is a committee, and now they're both – Mostert, who was kind of a, mid-tier RB2, is now sort of probably going to be more of a touchdown-dependent flex going forward, as is Jeff Wilson Jr. They're an explosive enough offense that it might be worth it, but yeah, this is a hit to Mostert's fantasy value, no question.
Still clearly a pass-first offense. Let's jump to Tampa Bay, though, where Tom Brady saved the season, and here's what he had to say after the game.
That was awesome. That was awesome.
How much does this team need an emotional win like that?
We needed it. We needed it. We got it. We fought to the end. Defense played great. Made some plays offensively. I know we left a few out there, but it's it's a team's tough team. So got some great players. Glad we won.
Awesome for Tom Brady, not necessarily awesome for his fantasy managers. He had 58 pass attempts, which he needed to get to just 280 yards, throws a touchdown finally on effectively the last play of the game. Is it time to give up? Is it time to give up on Tom Brady?
Yeah, here's the thing. All the numbers tell you, it should be better. The massive passing attempts. Again, so many drops. Scotty Miller drops a touchdown pass. The reason they had to drive down there at the end is because Scotty Miller literally misses one that hits him right here. That a professional wide receiver should make that catch.
Yep.
But there were Mike Evans, once again, another bad drop from Mike Evans in this one. But yeah, he's got the second most passing yards in the NFL this season, and yet on a fantasy points per game basis, he's not a top 10 guy.
Yep.
They play Seattle this week in Germany.
Yes. They didn't want to play my Seahawks on American soil.
No,
they chickened out.
Yeah, they did. They went across,
to Deutschland.
Yeah.
But, Geno Smith is a much better quarterback fantasy-wise than Tom Brady at the moment, which is incredible to say.
He's had one or fewer touchdown passes in 8 of 9 games, fewer than 18 fantasy points in 7 of 9 games, just 15.2 in this one. He's getting there on volume, but the Seahawks have a sneaky good defense. They have played better recently, much better. And so Seattle and then a bye. Those are the next 2 weeks. Then at Cleveland, home to New Orleans. And so
they're all kind of mid-tier defenses.
Yeah, here's what I would say is it depends on what you have, but if there's somebody, I don't know that there's an obvious guy to go grab off the waiver wire, but if there is,
it's the yards per attempt, which is the thing, because Brady under Arians was so good with the deep ball. That's not there anymore. He's like I said before, 58 pass attempts and not even 300 yards.
The guy that you had last year in your fantasy team, that guy's gone.
Yeah, he's done.
So you'd rather Brady than Aaron Rodgers. You'd rather Brady than Matthew Stafford, but
he's in the Marcus Mariota zone now, which is incredible to group those two names together, Tom Brady and Marcus Mariota.
Wow, look at you.
Hey, look, Tom
the
Brady's
man has a family, Jay Croucher, in the Marcus Mariota zone.
He is in the Mariota zone.
Shots fired from Croucher.
Yeah.
At Croucher JD.
Yeah.
Please at him. Please don't leave me in that.
All right.
But you know what? You're kind of right.
Yeah, exactly. You're with me on that.
You'd rather have Kirk Cousins than him.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? It's just he's in that mid-tier QB2 range now.
Let's talk about their backfield, which has also suffered. Leonard Fournette not living up to expectations, starting to share a little bit of work with Rachaad White, who has 8 carries to Fournette's 9. Neither of them really did anything on the ground, though Fournette still gets the receiving work.
Yeah, he ran around on 67% of his snaps. He led all the Buccaneers running backs in snaps overall, played 62% of them. Still got 14 touches in this game. The problem with Fournette is that the offense isn't going. No. And by the way, give credit where credit's due. The Rams are a good run defense. The Rams, for all the things that are going wrong with the Rams offensively, they still have Aaron Donald. They still have a pretty good defense, especially on the defensive line here. So I'm not ready to bail on Fournette. But again, Fournette, who early in the year was kind of a locked-in RB1, is much more of an RB2 and probably more touchdown-dependent than we would like.
Yep, agree. Okay, let's go to break. When we come back, Weekend Warriors, headlined by Matthews' man, the next LaDainian Tomlinson, apparently Ken Walker.
Yeah. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis
from NBC Sports Edge.